So welcome everyone to another episode of Lawyers Uncharted, previously Lawyers with Stories. If you've been listening for a while, you'll know that the objective of this podcast is to show you that the path into the legal profession is not straight because you are a unique person. And so you can't accept the narrative that's given to you at university because when you do that, then of course, severe disappointment is inevitable because you think that something is wrong with you because university said it would work this way and it didn't work. So I have my specific guests on to show you that it's okay to be quirky, it's okay to be unique, it's okay to even come from another field if you feel like it's for you and you want to make the jump. And even if you need the push to get out, this podcast is also for you. If you want to explore another maybe related field, and still employ your legal skills. So today's guest, Karen Botha, is South African, Polly South African, based in Cape Town. She's a law firm owner and has branched out into mediation. So she's also quite a prolific mediator in the Cape and has her own mentorship program. And we've had some dalliances and made some good forged a good partnership today. So Karen's story is unique, which I like. Okay, so she'll tell you the long version. So the version that I know is that she initially started studying fashion design. And it's not the first lawyer I've heard that started off in that field. And I often say that you needn't abandon. So if you end up being really good at it, Carlos will tell you she's not good at fashion design, but even if you end up being good at what you initially started with, you can find a way somewhere down the line to marry it with a legal thing. You can be entirely creative in that regard. So yeah, she started in fashion design, found that she was hopeless at it, and eventually got into law. And I think what will also resonate with most or with some of you is the fact that she did it as a single mom. And more power to you, more power to you, ladies. I don't think it's something that I could do. I don't think I've had the capacity to do that. So without giving too much away, alternatively leaving out some important details, I'm going to hand you over to Karen. And she's going to give you the elevated version at first, and then of course we'll give you the deeper, we'll go into the deeper dives and elaborate on some of the points, and most importantly, pull out practical tools, tips for you to take away from this episode. So Karen, over to you.
Thanks, Lisa. Thank you so much for having me today. Um, yeah, I get asked to tell my story sometimes um, because it is quite unusual, although it's becoming more common nowadays. But when I started, it was pretty unique. I did start as a fashion designer. I left school and went and studied fashion design. I started at the University of not university, Technikon in Johannesburg, and then moved back down to Durban and finished at what was then Technikon Natal, is now DUT. And yeah, so I spent 20 odd years in the fashion industry or the clothing industry, let's put it that way, not so much fashion. And I was in senior management positions, eventually working in factories in quality management. And the clothing industry was not in a good way when I was in the clothing industry. It still isn't. The cheap Chinese imports became a thing, and more clothing companies were closing down. Production was always very intense with the big companies, like the Edcons of the world, making sure that their prices were right and they dictated prices. So it was a very, very difficult and competitive place to work. And the hours were crazy because you would start at 7 very often in production and finish at 4:30. And in some cases, I was working 70 kilometers from home. So I was leaving home at 6:30 in the morning and getting home at 6:30 at night. As you said, I was a single mom. So I was very lucky to have the support of my mom, who would literally get up, take my son to school, make sure we had everything he needed, and then I would get home and, fetch him from her. So I was also retrenched 4 times because of the clothing industry. Every time there was another retrenchment coming up, we used to call it getting the brown envelope, and whether or not you got a brown envelope and whether your name was on the list. And yeah, my name came up onto the list 4 times. And, each time it's finding another job. There was one time I was literally unemployed for 8 months. And as a single mom, that's not great. So then I was working as a consultant in 2007, and I had been told that my contract was going to be terminated in any event in the near future. And I was living kind of on and off with a boyfriend of the time at a little guest house in Vicksburg in the Free State. Gorgeous little place. And there's a lot of clothing industries around that area in Port-Bachaba and Ladysmith and so on. So I often used to stay over there. And one Sunday afternoon, it was in April of 2007. I'll never forget it. I even remember what I was wearing. I was sitting on the veranda because we had a Sunday ritual. We would get up and then walk to the local spa about a kilometre down the road with the dogs, buy the Sunday newspaper, and then sit on the veranda and read the paper in the sun, because April in Vicksburg's pretty chilly. And we had these great, almost like hammock chairs that we used to sit on. And I was sitting there. My partner had gone off for a bike ride, so I was alone. And the lady pulled up into the driveway in a Mercedes Benz, and she was looking for a room in the guest house. So I showed her a room, took her money, booked her in, and she had a little boy with her about, I don't know, he must have been about 6 or 7. And he went into the house where we lived to go and play with my son, who at the time was about 12. And we left them there, and this lady and I, her name was Dorothy, we sat on the veranda because she was waiting for someone to come across from Lesotho, because she was going the next day to a wedding in Lesotho, and she was waiting for them to bring outfits for her, because apparently they have to have like 4 different outfits. So we were just having a cup of coffee, and of course, you get chatting, and I asked Dorothy what she did. And she told me that she was a lawyer. And I said to her, oh my gosh, I've always wanted to be a lawyer. Because I had, that had been a dream of mine, especially having gone through the life experiences that I'd gone through. I thought, number one, I would like to be empowered to be able to protect my own rights, and then also be able to assist other people in my position. The fighting the fight, the little people against the big people. That was the dream. Anyway, so I told her I always wanted to be a lawyer, and she looked at me sort of earnestly and said, well, why aren't you one? So I went, oh my gosh, I'm going to be 40 this year, because it was my year of turning 40, and like, it's too expensive, it takes too long, I don't have the time, I'm a single mother, I mean, it's just impossible. And she looks at me again very earnestly and said to me, well, I'm going to tell you my story, and when I'm done, I want you to stop making excuses. So been rebuked here by this lady. And now you must bear in mind that Dorothy is a Black woman and a single mom. So Dorothy told me, now I get goosebumps every time I tell this story, even to this day, bearing in mind this was in 2007, so a while back. Dorothy was a tea lady and cleaning girl in a all white, all male, all Afrikaans law firm in Pretoria. And Dorothy put herself through UNISA, qualified as an attorney, was admitted as an attorney. And when I met her, she was a partner at that law firm, that same law firm. So, I mean, look, the goosebumps have come. So how do you not stop making excuses when somebody who has so many more challenges to overcome than I did and not do, follow your dreams. So I contacted my mom immediately and I registered to start with UNISA at the beginning of 2008. So I completed my LLB in 4 years. I started articles at the beginning of my third year. So under the old act, you could start articles whilst you were still studying, but you had to then sign up for 5 years articles. But once you'd finished your degree and you'd graduated and you had, if you'd done 2 years, you could then apply to the court for condemnation that the 2 years was sufficient. So I finished in 2011 my LLB. In 2012, February, I wrote all 4 board exams. I got 98 for accounting. Don't ask me how, because I've never done accounting in my life, but I did. And got the highest mark in KZN. I was very proud of that. And then I had to do my PLTs, which was 6 months. So in July, I finally got my PLT certificates, and then I applied and I was admitted on the 28th of February 2012. And I was very blessed that I got articles with an amazing attorney who is just incredibly ethical and she was just amazing. And the funny part is that, I had sent my CV out to hundreds of people. And back in those days, we still had a postal service. I used to, every week, I would send out letters, put it in an envelope, put a stamp on it, and send it off. And I got 3 responses from all the letters that I sent out. 2 of them were thanking me for my application, but they didn't have any available positions and wished me luck in my future endeavors. The third one was much later, and that was Marion. And she phoned me and she asked me to come in for an interview, and I went in for an interview, and she told me the story about how she had received my application and she had shoved it in a drawer on her desk and completely forgotten about it. And several months later was cleaning out her desk drawers and came across this and read it again. And whilst she was reading through it, one of the things that I'd put on there as my hobbies and things that I've accomplished was I'm a horse rider. Well, I used to be back in the day. And I'm also a qualified horse riding instructor. And Marion has horses, and her daughter is actually now a jockey. And she got hold of me because of that. So I think from that, I learned that what's important on your CV is not always what your marks are, what your qualifications are, or what your history or your work experience is. People want to see that you're real, and there might be something in your CV that catches somebody's eye that makes you different to everybody else. And it happened to be that I was a horse rider and riding instructor. And then as soon as I was qualified, so my dream had always been to go into family law. I didn't want to be a general practitioner. I didn't want to be a conveyancer, all those other things. And Marion's practice is a general practice. So I had applied to a number of specialist family law attorneys in the Durban area. And again, I got, I think, 2 thanks but no thanks. At one other, I did go for 2 interviews, but they decided that I wasn't the person for them. And I'm actually grateful, because then I landed up at a specialist law firm that's a boutique firm. And that was far better for me because I gained so much more experience than you do if you go into one of the big firms. Because the big firms, what they generally do is they move you around departments. And so you get bits and pieces of everything rather than learning what is focusing on what you want to do. And I mean, I was very much thrown in the deep end. I came in, when you've done articles, you think you know everything, but you don't. Um, I think another piece of advice I would give to article clerks is I often get applications now for people wanting articles or who have just finished articles or who want to seed articles. And they generally say how amazing they are and what they can offer your firm. And I have to tell you that that's not true because when you are green and you have no experience and you're doing articles, you literally have nothing to offer a firm other than that perhaps you're really hardworking, which everybody says, and that you're a team player, which everybody says. Um, the only way that you can prove all of that stuff and what value you are is by actually doing the work. Um, One of the things I know that worked in my favor was the fact that I was older. So, I started when I was 40. By the time I started with Marion, I was 42. I was admitted just before my 45th birthday. So I was more mature. I had a lot of life experience. And having been divorced myself and being a single mother, that stood me in very good stead within the field I wanted to go into. Because straight away, people see a young person and they automatically assume you're an idiot because you don't have that life experience. You haven't, been hit by 20 buses and still got up and done what you needed to do to feed your children. So I think that also, stood me in good stead because I was more mature and I had that life experience. But I think for me, from what I gained from Dorothy and what I like to pass on to other people, and particularly women, obviously, because I am a woman and I've been through what many women are going through, is that it's never too late. If you want it, you will make it happen. But you also have to remember that you can't just put it out in the universe, oh, okay, I want to be a lawyer. You still have to make it happen. The universe isn't going to do it for you. Your parents aren't going to do it for you. Your community is not going to do it for you. God is not going to do it for you. You've got to do it. It's hard graft. For 4 years, 5 years of my life, I had no life. Number one, I couldn't afford it. I mean, I was a single mother and, article clerks don't earn much money. Um, and in the clothing industry, I was earning a decent income and I went to, so, my son and I were eating toast with margarine. And if we were very lucky, we would be gifted a jar of jam. And then we would make that last as long as we could. We drank cordial. We didn't drink Coke or fancy juices or anything like that. We drank cheap coffee. At the end of the month, it was scraping the pennies together and we'd go to the shop and my little one would say, please, can I have a chocolate? And I'd be like, no, actually, you can't, because it just wasn't. So, I had to suck it up and do what I needed to do. I never went out. I did not go out to dinner or drinks with friends. I didn't have the time. I literally studied 2 hours every night during the week and 4 hours a day on a Saturday and a Sunday. Every single day for 4 solid years. That's what I did. Because you just have to. If you are privileged enough to be able to go to a university and not have to work and bring up a child, kudos to you. If I see a CV and somebody has been to a university and studied at a university and has, had that opportunity and I see that they failed subjects, I will put that CV aside, because to me it means you haven't committed yourself to actually doing what you need to do. I could do it when I had an older, much less competent brain and had to learn how to study all over again. And studying law is not easy. We know that it's not easy. But if you want it, you will make it happen. And I think those are the sort of important lessons that I've learned. And now I'm starting again as well. I've had enough of lawyering. I am a little disillusioned by our justice system because of what's going on. And I believe, especially in family law and dealing with the types of very high conflict matters that we deal with in family law, where inevitably relationships and maintaining relationships are so important, that there are better ways to resolve those conflicts. So that is why I'm now focusing on mediation, and education is also very important for me, educating people on issues like trauma, which we all suffer from, especially in South Africa, where, we live in a very violent society and we have a very traumatic past. And our focus on gender-based violence is very close to my heart, workplace bullying and harassment, because those are very prevalent even in the law fields. So don't think that you're going into law and you're not going to suffer from those things. You probably are. And yeah, and then we also do acceptance, belonging, inclusion, diversity, and equity, because in South Africa, that is even more important than anywhere else in the world, in a country where we've had the type of history we've had. And also to ensure that we accept and include anybody, no matter what their identity, race, color, background, economic status, mental health status, etc. is. So yeah, that's where I'm going now. And I won't tell you how old I am now, but you can all calculate it. I'm not 40 anymore. I'm on a bit of a downhill slide to another big zero number, but it's not 40. But I'm excited about it, and I'm excited about the future of mediation, not just in South Africa, but around the world. I think it's becoming more and more the go-to rather than litigation, because of, number one, the cost of litigation, and number two, the time it takes to litigate. You won't, in Gauteng now, they're saying, what's 2031 for trial dates? Who's got 6 years to wait? And I know I'm very proud of the fact that I've been practicing now for 13 and a half years, and only 5 of my matters have gone to trial. And the reason is because I believe in settling matters. Many of those are on the court steps. They say we settle matters on the court steps. We do, not technically on the court steps, but yes, we do. But still, it's a better way than going to trial and wasting all that time and money. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all about me.
Oh, okay. And so a lot there. And of course, we could very easily turn it into a mediation podcast episode, but we shall refrain from that. I think what's the start of what I picked up first was the fact that your story is the story within the story. So you were inspired, and you were sort of woken up off your butt by somebody else's story,
Yeah.
and I think today's generation, at least in my experience working with them, I often have to say, it's gonna get harder. It's gonna get more complicated, your obligations are going to increase. Like you've got to sort of build that capacity while you're young, you know. And I think you have to say it speaks to that point of there's somebody with infinitely more challenges than you, um, that actually had it in their resolve to say, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna get out of victim mentality. But I think that's a lot that is like the norm now, especially amongst the younger generation. And I find myself having to sort of, put a little bit of fire in their seat and say, get up and do something, you know. So I think definitely, I mean, you said you had maturity or being older was to your advantage. But I think maybe you could just talk to that aspect of, and we know now, look, we know articles, it is what it is. Their salary is the same, like what you would have experienced. The abuse is there, all of those things. But maybe just speak to that sort of resolve, like you want this career, you have to make it work. Um, like just maybe just speak to that, like the mindset shift that's needed amongst those that are graduating, those that maybe the Gen Z and Gen Alpha, where they thrust into this victim mentality culture. And it's so easy to play the victim. Um, but and we say, or at least I sometimes say, the lawyers fight for everybody's rights except their own. So we tend to pull back and play the victim when it comes to our stuff. But we can go there and stand in front of the judge and sort of canvass for somebody else's rights, for their relief. So maybe just speak to that. Like, what would you say to those the younger ones that tend to default into that victim mentality? And like you were inspired by that former tea lady, and that for literally watch you out of excuses and apathy. Maybe speak to that to the younger generation in terms of what they need to do to sort of counter the culture that they're coming into. And just sort of take charge. Stop making excuses.
Okay, so there's a few things on that I'll speak to from my own experience. So I was a victim. I'm a survivor of gender-based violence. I'm a survivor of childhood abuse. I'm a survivor of bullying and grooming at school. We didn't know what grooming was in those days, but I had a teacher who was grooming me. I knew it was uncomfortable, and I literally dropped out of. We had in those days you could do higher grade or standard grade. I dropped out of higher grade science that I was very good at into standard grade science because of a teacher grooming me. So I'm a victim of that and a victim of domestic abuse. And for as a victim of domestic abuse, particularly, you know, again, terminology we didn't know back then, we didn't use back then, like coercive control and controlling behavior and I was a victim of all of those things. So by the time I was in my early mid 30s, I had lost all sense of self. I didn't know. I didn't know what my identity was. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know where I fitted in or how I fitted in. I felt completely. I use this word discombobulated because that's exactly what it was like. I didn't have a tribe. I had a best friend, but I didn't have a tribe. I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. And and I think now we're more and more aware of those types of things, which is good. But until you change, like you say, until you change your victim mentality to I'm a survivor and take back your power, you are always going to be a victim and you're always going to be victimized. So one of the things that there is the most incredible book which I will tell everybody to read, and it's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Okay. I had tried reading that book 3 times and failed because it's not an easy book to read. And the reason I failed was every time I came to habit number 2, I couldn't get past that habit. The 4th time was after I met Dorothy. And those months waiting, between when I applied to UNISA and when I could start, I sat down and I finished that book. And that second habit is this: it's begin with the end in mind. Now, what's your end? So what Covey tells you to do is to imagine that you're at a church. Now, I'm not a religious person, but I can put this into my mind. Imagine that you're at a church and there's people milling around outside. Everyone's dressed in black and dark colors, and they all look sad, and they're talking quietly amongst themselves. But there are people that you see your friends, your colleagues, your family members. When you greet them, they don't greet you back. So you enter the church, and as you walk down the pews, you see more people who are from your community, whatever, organizations you belong to, friends, family, all of that kind of thing. But nobody's greeting you, nobody's looking at you. And you get to the coffin, and when you look in the coffin, the person is you, right? That's the end. Now, beginning with the end in mind, you must now write 4 eulogies of what you want people to say about you at your funeral. And those, 1 person from your family, 1 friend, 1 work colleague, and 1 person from your community, your greater community. Now, when I did that exercise, finally got to do that exercise because it took me several times, I took it a step further. And what I did was I wrote 4 eulogies of what those people would say then. Okay. And that's why I couldn't get past that exercise, because what I felt that people would say about me then horrified me. I was like, not even my family would say nice things about me, because I just wasn't the type of person that I would want to aspire to be. And only I can change that. Only I can change who I am. So I did those 4 eulogies of what people would say then. I mean, and I cried a lot. Okay, a lot. And then I wrote the eulogies of what I would want people to say about me when I do die. And the idea is to go from where you are to where you want to be in the end. And I then used that same mind shift when I started studying law. And, people call it visualization, and what you think you attract. And I do believe that what you think you speak attracts back to you. And so when I started my degree, every single day I would imagine myself on that stage being capped. See yourself in that gown, see yourself with the colors of your degree around your shoulders, see yourself with that cap. When you're coming to be admitted, see yourself in that courtroom, see yourself taking that oath. Go to court and see what happens when people are admitted. Learn that oath, understand that oath, because we're making an oath to the Constitution, right? We will uphold the Constitution. That's what we're saying. And practice being in that place. Imagine that you're there now, not I'm going to get there, I'm there right now. And if you do that, those exercises, I mean, that's what Dorothy did, even if she didn't know she was doing it. That's exactly what Dorothy did. Dorothy said to herself, I can be an attorney, despite my challenges, despite the fact that I'm a Black female single mother. I can do that. And she did. And against all the odds, she did it because she believed in herself. So the first step is to believe in yourself, and you can't believe in yourself if you've got a victim mentality, because having a victim mentality means you don't believe in yourself. It means you don't understand the incredible power you have. And I don't mean power in a way of, like any kind of violence or any kind of abusive power. The power sits within you on things like how you react to how people treat you. So if I allow my victimhood, the abuse that I suffered, to trigger something in me that makes me react, then I am giving my power over to that person who is now victimizing me. If I react in a calm manner without being triggered, it means I've taken back my own power. I think that's so important. No matter what you're studying, or no matter what journey you're going on, if you decide you want to be an entrepreneur and you don't want to study anything, good for you. If you believe that you can do it, you can do it. You just have to believe. Some people who believe in God and who have faith, they can't see it, they can't hear it, but they believe. It's the same thing. Believe in yourself, because ultimately you are the one who can do whatever you want to do if you decide that you want to do it. Did I cover everything?
Yeah, I think, yeah, you did. Actually reminded me of a point I made yesterday in a mentorship session, the same one that I referred to before we started recording. It's this whole issue of passivity. Okay, so I am going to study law. I'm already walking into a system. Um, I'm going into articles. I am just passively walking into the system. So the degree is happening to me. The articles or the practical vocational training is happening to me, and the rest of my career is happening to me. So besides the victim mentality, there's also, I think, associated with that is this whole thing about passive, being passive. So I'm just doing, for example, what my friends are doing. We're all applying together. I'm not thinking critically. I'm going to a law firm, like you said. I can determine how people treat me, but rather I know the narrative of what's happened to other people. And so I'm going there, I'm expecting it to happen to me. And then when it happens to me, I say, there's it. There's exactly what my friends are talking about. Law is terrible, articles is terrible. No critical thinking. The same thing with going into practice. Whether you start your own firm or you are working for a firm. It's a whole thing of I'm just flowing, I'm just being moved along. There's no
Yeah.
active participation to say
Yeah.
this is my career, so I'm going to determine how I go through my studies. I'm going to determine how I navigate articles. And I always tell them articles is inherently difficult, right? But it doesn't have to be harder than that. And you can
Mm.
determine how much harder it's going to be by your attitude. And of course, your eventual career, wherever you land in the field, um, you have to be actively participating. You got to be, and of course, self-awareness, all those things come in. So that's a good point, and I think it's linked to the victim mentality,
Mm.
where we don't let the stuff happen to us and say, "Oh, woe with me, I'm another victim again," or "Woe with me." It just confirms what everyone is telling you. Can you not
Yeah.
change? Because again, as we started off the podcast by saying, you are unique. So you can change the narrative. You can change how you navigate it. And by changing how you navigate it, that becomes a story for someone else to, be inspired by and say, look, if that person can change the narrative by
Yeah.
consciously being conscious about the entire experience, then so can I.
Yeah. It's about being the change you want to see.
Yeah, yeah, because
Yeah.
I think and that's something, unfortunately, critical thinking is not something that university teaches us.
No, no,
Really.
it's not. And unfortunately, yeah, so schools don't teach it, universities don't teach it, our parents don't necessarily teach it to us. We learn it through the school of hard knocks.
Mhm.
Now, I'll never forget PLTs. I was obviously the oldest person in PLTs, at 44. And, I used to watch these kids come in. They would arrive late. They would always be on their phones. And I literally went bat poo crazy. And there were four young people in particular who I reported several times. And I know that the lead actually reported they were all from the same firm. They were doing articles at the same firm. And they would sit like just behind me and they were constantly talking and driving me nuts because I had a plan and I had a goal and I was there to learn and to listen because those people who are coming to do the PLTs for you and are there to train you and facilitate that have experience in what they're doing and are there to help you along the way. And if you fail your board exams, I can guarantee you were sitting on your phone during PLTs. So I did my board exams before PLTs. I had just started PLTs and I wrote all four board exams in one sitting. I did them all. I didn't do one this year and one next year and one the next. No, I knew I had to pass them all out because I had a time frame. You know, I'm not a baby anymore. I'm not living with mommy and daddy anymore. I don't have that silver spoon where I just have to go home and eat, sleep, and watch Netflix. I had to do the hard work. And I will never forget, it was the ethics lecture. And I can't remember who the lecturer was, but he asked the students, why are we studying law and what field do we want to go into? And he started right at the back of the lecture hall. And, the first, mumbled answer, and then he goes to the next one. And it's like trying to draw blood out of a rock just to get some kind of, And eventually I put my hand up and I said, sorry, this is incredibly painful. I know exactly what I want to do. May I please tell you what I want to do? And he was like, okay. I said, right, I've finished my degree. I'm going to be admitted this year. I am going to work for a family law firm for 5 years. And after those 5 years, I'm going to start my own family law firm. That's what I want to do. And I mean, everyone was like, the mutterings behind, because I was literally in a group of, I don't know, 40, 50 people. I was the only one who knew why I went into law and what law I wanted to study and what my goal was. And I achieved every single one of my goals because I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. I had a plan. I wasn't going to yes, getting articles is fucking hard, but I just kept on sending letters out. If you don't do that, it's, just on that note, please, if you are applying for articles, please, I beg of you, do not send an email. Hi, I'm not your buddy. I'm not your mate. Hi, or what's it? How are you? HAU. What? No. You have to be professional. You have to show that you're a professional. The other thing that's very important, Lisa, before I forget, when I applied for articles, I was very clear. In my letter, I said I want to do family law. And and I see that you have a family law department. I addressed each letter independently to the law firm I was applying to. Not this, oh, I can see that I can add such value to your law firm, and I want to be a maritime lawyer. I'm a family law attorney. Don't send me a letter if you want to be in maritime law because it's not going to happen. So yeah, you need to be the change you want to see. And, you know, I think, again, because I was older and I had that sense of self-confidence, I didn't suffer the type of abuse that I know article clerks suffer. Yes, I did the running around and I had to go and file things and paginate court files and stand in queues at the High Court for hours on end. I did all of that stuff, right? But what I did was I formed relationships with the staff at the courts. I was always polite. I always asked them how they are. I always left them feeling better, not feeling worse. And that is so important because no matter what you do in law, your colleagues and the people who work in the system around you are going to be there for a long time. You have to have relationships with them. You can't be shouting at people at the courts rooms. You can't be shouting at the court staff, no matter how useless you think they are at their jobs. You can't do that. You have to work with the system. And as much of a grind as it is, you have to work with the system. And once you start getting, once you become a lawyer and you get into that position where you start to have a voice, then use your voice to change the system. If I go to a court and I see broken toilets, I take photos and I send it to the Department of Justice. They know me. They know who I am. I had the ex-Deputy Minister of Justice on WhatsApp, and I used to send him photos on WhatsApp. Would you sit on this toilet, Deputy Minister? Because I won't. But this is what you're expecting people. And then I would walk into that courtroom a few weeks later and this court staff would say, was it you who complained? And I'd go, yes, it was. So you can make change happen. You have to be within the system to make the change happen. So go in knowing you are going to face adversity. It doesn't matter what field you go into. I was in the clothing industry. I faced huge adversity. It's male, white dominated. I face that challenge every day. The law field is still the same. We've got those challenges. Know what your challenges are. If you're a woman, you're going to face sexual harassment. You are going to. Mark my words. I did. Okay? From senior counsel, I faced sexual harassment. I dealt with it. If you are a person of color, you're going to face additional challenges. Know that it's going to happen. Prepare yourself for it. But it's the way that you handle it that's most important. Because going in and it's because I'm a woman that you're treating me this way, or it's because I'm white that you're treating me this way, or it's because I'm black that you're treating me this way, is not going to get you anywhere because the system protects itself. The system protects itself. So, yeah, you have to know what you're up against and be ready to be the change you want to see. And maybe you won't be that change whilst you're doing your articles. There are some people who are doing their articles, made amazing changes, okay? And good for them, bully for them for doing that. But you might want to take the target off your back and work with the system, get in, and when you're in, start changing the system.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've done it. And so I say that, and it obviously flabbergasts me when I see people with immense influence and there's little me, and I'm the one getting angry. And I feel like my voice, oh, what can I do? Well, somebody would maybe sitting in the president's office and they're not saying anything, right? And
yeah.
But what you said is so important in that once you get to that level of, doesn't have to be that long, say maybe 5 years, and you've developed a bit of a track record within the profession, the best way you can, we're not gonna sort of overhaul the entire system, but speak.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Be counter culture, be counter to the culture that's in the profession. And no profession is free of toxicity, like you said. It's all bad out there. But it's how you navigate and it's how you can run away from the system or you can stay and you can fight. And I think that's something that I learned quite early on. In fact, one of my family members just exited the system because it was corrupt. And someone told me, well, why didn't they stay and fight? And so now I'm sort of in that position where I can do that. I can, but I have no allegiances. And I think this is also important, in that you are not afraid to be unpopular. If you want to be in the popular crowd, you want to be in the big low circles, you cannot straddle the system like that. And you also want to make the right noises. You can't do that. You've got to be either or. And I think one of the best ways that we can, even from the time you an article club and you see certain things, and of course, having a little bit of wisdom, insight, life experience that can help with that. Where you can start to make some noises, obviously within the bounds of your experience, of the position. But then as you become more sort of on your own and unfettered, then you start to speak out. And I think that's something that graduate students are afraid to do, because they will say, for example, what if nobody employs me? What if I don't get? And I often say, look, that's just one attorney in a country full of attorneys and law firms. That one person doesn't have the power to jeopardize your career. And again, if you want it, if you are goal driven, that's not gonna happen. You're not gonna let somebody just, end your career because you spoke out. And I think we need to encourage more of that bravery. You can't complain. Okay. So if you're gonna get out of a victim mentality, part of that is to start addressing the issue. So you're taking your power back, but you also start to wake other people up and say, colleagues, we need to talk. We are in this position, we need to use this position for good. So I think that's something that the younger ones are afraid to do. And they feel like, oh no, you talk, or you're more experienced, or no, I say whatever level of influence that you have, even if it's influence over your fellow students. If you see things before you even enter the profession, that is not okay. You need to start, and I say the best people to help you are your own peers. So if you're a student, students help students. If you're a CA, CAs help CAs. It's fine for you and I to help them, but you guys are in the boat at the same time. So you need to start talking, whether you start a union, whatever you do, right? But you've gotta, if you're gonna take your power back, you've gotta speak. And you've got to speak without that fear of, if I speak, someone's gonna it's gonna jeopardize my. I think that's the fear that holds them back a lot of the time. They don't want to say anything, because and I think again, you must be okay with being unpopular. And something that's a point that we didn't get to explore, as you mentioned in your story, was you must be okay with not being in the big circles. You must be okay with, for example, working at a smaller firm. Okay, so if you're working at a smaller firm, you're not really playing in the big leagues as such. And if you stay there, it's not a problem. You don't have aspirations to go to the top. So you can fight from obscurity, I think. I think a lot of people think also you're gonna be right at the top before you start singing. But if you're okay with being sort of in the little leagues, but you have a big mouth. I mean, I've always been like this. So it doesn't matter where I am. I just, I call BS. I call foul on most things. So you must be also okay with consequences. And if it jeopardizes, if you get blackballed for it, you must be able to reimagine your career, recreate, and move on. But the sacrifice made, obviously, at least if I have to suffer that consequence, the sacrifice is always worth it, because I know I will keep fine. So I think That's an important point. And I'm not sure how we're going to land the plane. Um, but I think maybe since you've already touched on it, maybe you can talk about the application, how you apply for articles from a law firm owner's perspective. So that's obviously the one of the gripes of graduates that, I'm applying, I'm sitting at home for 2 years and I'm not getting anything. I'm like, you wasted 2 years. But anyways, like, and then they're like, oh, no. It's my second year of unemployment since being what was the LLB worth? Did I make the right sacrifices? All these things. And nobody gets back to us. And so maybe just from your side, since you've already mentioned it, like what are the, I would say, better practices that you would encourage if you want your application to be seen or stand out?
Taken seriously. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll speak on that now. I just want to debunk a bit of a myth. Getting into a big law firm is not necessarily going to put you on a trajectory to fame and glory. Like I say, I was in a smaller law firm. I was the only other attorney. It was, the owner of the law firm and me. But the difference is that when I sent a letter out, people didn't remember the firm I worked for. People remembered me. The clients they don't go to a big law firm. When they go to a big law firm, they're just another number. And they will probably be bounced around from one attorney to another, or if you're a CA, from one CA to another, because you're going from department to department. So your name is not getting out there unless you are going to eventually become a director and a partner, which is going to be a long slog. I've got contemporaries who are my age who are still not in that position. But they've been fighting and fighting and fighting and working like dogs, and they're still not in that position. And when there's a person who heads up a particular department in that big law firm, and if you're the one beneath that person, the go-to person is still the person at the top, and everybody talks about that person. I want to go to that person at that law firm because that person, but there's several attorneys who work underneath that person who are in fact probably more competent than the person at the top. But when you're in a small law firm, people remember you. So if you are good at what you do and you make the right impression, people are going to take notice of you. So when I started my own firm, I left with 3 clients that my employer at the time knew I was taking with me because they'd all come to me. And they wanted to go with me, and they told her they wanted to go with me, and she was happy with that. Within the first month, I had 26 clients like that. Why? Because I had developed a relationship with the clients and people knew me. As soon as my website was up, I just started getting hits. So just people must think about that carefully. So, okay, if you're applying to me, I am a specialist in family law. If you are not 100% interested in family law, don't send your CV to me. Don't waste my time. If you are addressing something to me, address it to me as Miss Botha, not Corin, not Madam, not Sir. I've had them. Do not say hi or how's it or whatever. Sometimes I get black emails just with a CV attached. Generally speaking, I'm not interested in what marks you got at varsity. Please don't send me your entire transcript because chances are you failed a couple of subjects. And as soon as I see that, if you were at UCT or UJ or WITS or Stellenbosch or Rhodes or one of those universities as a full-time student and you failed, I'm done. I'm not even going to look at your CV. honest to God. Okay. I want to know that you are humble enough to say, I don't know anything. I know I've got a law degree, but I know nothing. And I want to be able to learn from you. Attorneys are a bit vain. Okay. We want to know that you've done a bit of research into us and you think we are fabulous. And you want to be just like us. Okay. Like, I have followed your work. I really love you. I think you do great things. I want to be like you. That it's got to be more personal so that the person knows you've taken the time to understand who that attorney is. You know, um, I think we also have to just remember that the vast majority of law firms are sole practitioners, and that I think from the last time I checked, we had 29,000 and some change legal practitioners on the practicing role, and of those, just under 18,000 were sole practitioners. Okay, it's a large number, and the vast majority of those are battling. And now, with the advent of the minimum wage for CAs, there are a lot fewer positions available. So you are going to struggle, even more so than when I was. I mean, when I was doing PLTs, there were clerks who were not earning anything. There were others who were earning like 2,000 Rand a month. It was ridiculous. I was one of the highest paying ones, and I wasn't even earning a great income. So yeah, my advice would be research the person you're applying to, research the type of law you want to do, have something you want to do. Don't just go in. I mean, look, I've had 2 article clerks. The first one wanted to do family law. Unfortunately, she didn't finish her articles and she didn't go into law, but that's fine. She decided to take another route. That's great. Nas, who was my second article clerk, came to me and she said to me, Karen, I don't want to do family law. I want to do human rights law or maritime law. I'm still not sure, but I need articles. That was honest. It was, and so I gave her articles, you know. And she's now my business partner in my other business. So, but it's making a personal connection. So if you are, if there's an event and you meet an attorney, go and introduce yourself and say, I'm busy studying and I'm very interested, and find out about that person and write to them personally. Make it personal. And yeah, I think that's probably the best information. Don't send your marks, please. Don't send your marks, because it's probably going to work against you. Don't do it.
And that I mean that's I've taken some flack for proposing for firms that ask for academic research. People say no, it does have some utility. And I'm like, it actually perpetuates a myth that if you did well in family law, for example, that is what you're going to get into one day. When we both know that the theoretical aspect of it, you can perform well in it in theory, but you might suck at it in practice. So I think, and it also, ultimately for me, it gives a false perception, or it causes me subconsciously at least to make a false assumption about this candidate, because I think, whoa, Dean's commendation every semester for 4 years, they're going to be a great asset to my firm. And then I end up losing clients because the dude doesn't have basic communication skills. So it's definitely, I think it adds to the preconceived notions of, when you see the CV, who you think you're going to be hiring versus who you're actually hiring. So I'm a big fan of leaving out academic records altogether because frankly, mine is not that great, so I wouldn't have gotten articles at law firm. That's a because I took an extra year because I failed a couple of courses, which wasn't family law. I passed family law the first go, and it was quite notorious for students to fail it when I was at university. So
Lisa,
yeah,
my highest marks, my highest marks were in criminal law, and I hate criminal law. Okay, but they were my highest marks. My lowest marks were the law of evidence, and now I'm a litigating attorney, so I have to know. But in practice, I'm
yeah,
very good at it.
yeah,
But in an exam, I was useless at it. That's why, to me, your marks, what you are utterly irrelevant. They're utterly irrelevant because, like you say, you could be useless at a subject just because you don't like studying that subject or whatever the case may be, or maybe you lost a family member just before the exam. Okay, but in practice, you might be really good at it. And when you're a litigating attorney, you've got to have people skills because you're working with people all the time, and you're in the high conflict situations. How do you handle that's much more important? Your people skills are far more important to me than what your marks were.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think you guys, you know what not to do and what to do. You're applying to Karen's farm. And I think it's the drum that we have to keep beating on. And just I mean, just to finish off on this point, that I think the reason why you get such a generic, maybe I'm playing devil's advocate, titles aside, but I think why you get such a generic approach and why it's just like they sort of batch send and they inundate law firm inboxes is out of desperation. And
Yeah.
desperation comes with victimhood. When you start feeling you're at the mercy of the system and you think it's a power move to just do that. But it's actually a betrayal of your desperation. And I tell people, I've said this in the past, please, you are desperate to get articles. If the struggle is very, very real, it's been real for decades, but maintain some dignity. Okay. Don't put
Yeah.
yourself at the mercy of being exploited. Don't send, for example, like what you say, don't tailor your application. Retain some kind of composure where you know who you're sending to. Create a spreadsheet. You know who you're sending to, and you can track responses. Be intelligent about
Mm.
it. So I think that
Mm.
entire, even that email without a body, it's just because they just if they it's catharsis. If they send out a 20 CVs every morning, they feel good. Okay,
Mm.
so there's all that psychology that goes on that
Yeah.
I often get or even I see posts about it. I'm like, no, like you need to be clever about it. And of course you need to set a timeline. So if you set a year to make applications, then after a year you're going to stop. And of course you've got to have a plan now. What are my alternatives? Maybe I should delay articles for whatever, however long, and I should do something else in the meantime. Okay, so you can't also just indiscriminately year after year after year, because eventually no one's going to listen to you. It's going to be like you crying wolf. People are going to get tired of you. If they see you in an interview, they're going to say, "Oh, my colleague also interviewed you last week," right? So you don't want to make a nuisance of it. Like just be dignified, be intelligent about it, and don't inundate, because if you inundate, you're going to make yourself a sheer nuisance, and no one's going to even open the email. I mean, I think there was just to cite an example, there was an owner law firm owner that actually posted about it. Like, guys, it's flooding the inbox. And I had to piggyback off of both and warn candidates not to do that because these are businesses. Okay. So you're also going to keep in mind that the inbox has to be free to receive business. And so if you inundate their inboxes with your CVs, when they haven't even advertised, that's the other part. They haven't even advertised, but you're desperate. So you're sending you spamming inboxes. They're not going to be able to receive business email. You're actually stopping them from conducting their business. So please just bear in mind that they need the inbox for business. It's not there for you, not meant for your CV. So your CV is not to receive pride of place in their inbox. So I mean that as I thought that was it was quite tragic that you had to post that, but it just gave that perspective from those that are receiving all of these applications. Yeah.
Yeah. I
So
think there's
that
just one other thing that with especially with the younger generation, Lisa, I know we've gone way over time here, and people are probably have stopped listening by now. But for those who do sit through until the end, there is another thing that I'd like to just say to you is I know social media is great, and I know you want to post pictures of your parties out and videos of you and your mates getting drunk and um, pulling funny faces and whatever, doing chicken lips and all of that. Just you are going into a profession, okay? I am not going to go to have surgery done by a doctor who on the weekends is posting pictures of himself and his mates at a bar drunk as skunks. I'm not going to do it. You know, I'm not going to go to somebody who's supposed to be a professional who's doing stupid TikTok videos. Think about your social media footprint. It is so important. You're going into a profession, use the professional ones. Use LinkedIn, it's a brilliant tool. All right. Um, Make sure that your Facebook or any of those other types of things don't have rubbish on them. Um, you've got to, like I say, you've got to work with the system. And I promise you, people are going to check out your social media. It's just like when you apply for a visa or you want to go and live in another country, they check out your social media, you know? So be careful what you do on social media. Very important.
absolutely. I think that's something I touch on when I talk about legal professionals creating a personal brand. Is that by doing that, you've inadvertently started building a brand. So you've already started
Yep.
creating, people are creating an image of you, at least parasocially, of the person that you are. Because you're posting whatever, drunk on the weekend or clubbing or abseiling, or even if it's legit activity, people have started to see, the kind of person that you are. And so the more you put yourself out there, the bigger your brand becomes. And of course, more people are exposed to that. And if you are not hired because of a certain video or a certain reel or a TikTok video, then the blame is on you. So I think, especially with the younger, and I mean, there's a lot of older people as well, in fairness, that are looking to create a certain image or reinvent themselves in midlife or whatever, and they want to create following and stuff like that. So just 100% be careful about, because you're building an image, and if that image carries over into your professional context, then people have the prerogative to use that against you. And it might make things a lot harder, not just to get in, but also to stay in. Because if you have a reputation as a party animal, when you get admitted, people will say, the client might even say, but I saw this, how
Yeah.
come you're so serious now? I used to follow you on Instagram. What happened to you? Right? So it definitely will follow you, which is why I'm only on LinkedIn primarily, and I don't post a lot of personal stuff. So I feel that's not, even to teach people lessons, I'd rather use X and Y and those kinds of things. Because I think some
Yeah.
things need to be managed properly and pulled back, and not everyone needs to know everything about it. No one really cares. So yeah, we have gone a ways over, but I think I've come to expect that, when we have such, even we're not talking about mediation, but there's always so much that we have to exchange. And of course, you being the star of the show, there's probably haven't pulled one iota of of lesson from your experience, but I hope we created some that a valuable resource that people can listen. I always encourage them to listen more than once because it might just be in a comment, it might just be in a remark that we make, it might be in a fuller part of it that you say something that changes you or gives you, sparks something in your brain, and you say, "Wow, I can do that. I can implement that." That's what we want. We don't want to just give you stories. We want the stories to affect you in a positive way, whether it's coming into the profession or whether it's the encouragement that you need, as I said at the start, to exit. Whether you feel this is you're playing a game, you're just fitting in, it's not for you, you did it for the wrong reasons. And like Karen, you start to get solutions with the whole fighting aspect of it, which I also got to solution. I realized as Karen put it exactly what I thought, that there's a better way to do things. So you might want to make some kind of a product. Okay. And in that the episode will help me to do that. And I guess we're both happy with that outcome. So thank you, Karen. You're a very deep well. And
I know we could talk forever. I know.
we could talk. We
Sorry.
could talk. No, that's the truth, and we don't talk that often, to be honest. So,
I know.
so once we get going, it's like, oh, 2 hours.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
no, and I mean, I also look up to you in terms of the mediation space, and we're hoping to make some alliances. Um, in my own efforts to promote mediation in amongst university students and also amongst law students who are not cut out for litigation or also want an alternative to a legal career that you don't often get told about early on. So yeah, I'm happy that you could leverage our relationship and create this episode. And maybe you can just tell people where they can find you.
Okay, well, best is to just visit my websites. I have two, so it depends on which part you're interested in. If you're more interested in law, then it's www.corinbotha.co.za. And if you're interested in mediation, then you can go to www.ddrsa.co.za. It
Okay,
stands for
cool.
Dignified Dispute Resolution, DDRSA.
And of course
Yeah.
on LinkedIn as well. So it's your
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn.
okay,
Stalk
cool.
me all you like.
Not on Instagram, not on TikTok.
You know what? I don't have TikTok. I've got Instagram. I have no clue how to use it. I don't post on it very often. I'm technologically disadvantaged, and I'm quite happy to admit that. I'm on Facebook, but my settings on Facebook are very private. But as Karen Botha attorney, I've got a page. Dignified Dispute Resolution's got a Facebook page as well. It also has Instagram, but again, I don't do that. Naz does that part. That's why you have younger business partners, so they can do all that stuff.
Okay, everyone. So hopefully you made it to this part of the episode. Congratulations. Be sure.
We will know, Lisa, we'll know who made it to the end because they're the ones who are going to stalk me.
Okay. So guys, yeah, this will be posted on my YouTube channel, so you can thumbs up, like, share, subscribe, do all those things. Leave a comment if you so wish. And of course, share this. Post it to your own platforms. You want to download it and do that. Please feel free. This podcast is not for fame and fortune. It's literally to create a resource and to open up your thinking in terms of your legal career path. So thank you again, Karen. your time. It was
Thanks,
a
Lisa.
lovely chat, I think, and a very natural chat. We created something hopefully valuable for the younger ones coming in, and even those that are older that are wanting to make the leap or wanting to cover it. So thank you for listening, everyone, and I will catch you in our next episode.
Thanks, Lisa.